So today we're going to be ranking every single TDS update in history from the oldest all the way to the newest uh, as of right now. This is like being recorded before the Halloween event, so it's like every update until the update before this year's Halloween event. So starting off in the beginning, we have the release of the game. Now basically it's just like very basic. When it first started, there wasn't much to it. There's only like maybe like 8 towers in the game first released, but I have to give it a S tier just because of the fact that that's what it started at all, and basically that's how it started, and everything else came afterwards. So even though the quality of the game wasn't good at the time, it basically like set the standard of what was to come next. And then the first update they had actually added the John Tower, which obviously was one of the best towers in the game when it released, because it gave like it was either like the 40 or 50% damage buff. I mean, there wasn't much to update besides the tower, so I'll give it B tier just because it was such a strong tower back in the day. And then for the Gladiator event, I'll probably give that an A tier update. It added the freezer, Gladiator, and then the event itself. Now, when they added the freezer in this update, when it was first added, this is when the freezer was OP because it had the like Ice Age ability, where basically it could like freeze the bosses, and you could like micro the ability to like permanently freeze bosses so they couldn't move. So when this released, the freezer was a very strong tower, like one of the strongest, until they like nerfed it. So I'll probably give it A tier because of that. And then back to back, probably like another A tier update would be the Outlaw and the Cowboy update. This is when they added the Outlaw and the Cowboy. Now, the Cowboy obviously just good because it makes money while like defending and stuff. And then the Outlaw, obviously, back in the day, the Outlaw was pretty much the highest DPS tower back in the day for like the first year. So it's pretty obvious why I chose that. And then we have the military base update. I'll also put this one into B tier because this update added the military base and the Crook boss into the game, both two good towers at the time. They started to get outclassed like a bit later, but at the time when they released, they were pretty good. And these are the first spawner towers to be added to the game, being the military base and Crook boss. And they both were added in the same update, so it was pretty good. And then following that, we also have, I'll probably give this a B tier as well, the Enforcer. Now, this turned into the Shotgunner later on, but when it was the Enforcer, it was very strong because once you got it to max level, you had the ability to summon in the SWAT vans, which had like 600 HP per van. And if you place down a bunch of Enforcers, you could basically spam the ability and deal like tons of damage by just spamming a bunch of SWAT vans to summon in. And then after that, we have the Rocketeer. I think I might give this one like A tier for like how strong it was back in the day, because I'm pretty sure this was, besides the demo man, this is like one of the first splash damage towers in the game. And before it was like nerfed, it was basically the strongest splash damage tower in the game. Like it was doing massive damage. And I remember like back in the day during the 2019 Halloween event, everyone was like spamming this because the explosion radius was like really huge, and it was doing like 150 200 damage a shot. And then back in the day, for that much damage with explosion, it was very strong and very powerful for how it was back in the day. After that, we have the Sentry. I'll probably give that C tier just because it's sort of forgettable, and it was only in the game for a few months before getting removed. But when it was in the game, the Sentry had like a very unique like ability to it, where the longer it would shoot and the longer it would fire for, the faster the fire rate would increase. So like the more damage it did, the faster it would shoot. So the longer you had it down, the more DPS it would do, depending on how long it was firing for. And after that, we have the turret, which is also B tier, because at the time it was one of the best DPS towers when it was added, and it still is to this day. And then obviously we have another event, the second event, Area 51 event, where you got the commando from beating this event. And when the commando was added, it was the strongest tower in the game. It was even stronger than both the outlaw and the turret. It was the highest DPS tower at the time. It was better than everything, better than minigunner. It was just so good until they nerfed it. It was doing like 120 DPS, which isn't much for today, but at the time that was the highest DPS tower in the game, and like nothing could beat commando. So I have to give it like top of A tier just because of that strong tower that came out with the event. After that, we have the Mega update, which I will have to give this S tier just because the Mega era of TDS was one of the best eras, and this basically changed the game completely, rewriting the codes of the game. It was basically a huge overhaul like of the game's code. This is when Fallen was added to the game, so we got Fallen along with all of the new enemies that were in the Fallen mode. We basically got like the medic was added in this update. It basically added a lot of animations to the towers and enemies that didn't have them before. Certain towers got buffed as well. And overall, this was just one of the best updates at the time. And now, this one is probably another A tier event, the Halloween 2019 event, which was a really good event. You got Slasher from beating it, obviously. And at the time, Slasher was very strong. At the time, it was even better than Gladiator. Now it's like not as good as it was back then, but when it was released, Slasher was one of the best early game into mid game towers at the time. After that, we have the DJ update.
What kind of... Oh, did it just do the Nene? Did it just do the Nene? Oh my god, it just did the Nene! Holy crap, this is way better than Tyrolls!
Which, obviously, I'll give this S tier just because DJ is one of the best support towers in the game. But there's like one thing about this update not many people know. Like when DJ was first added to the game at max level, it gave a 50% range buff instead of a 35, which it was nerfed to like a week later. So the first week when DJ was added to the game, it was very OP because it would give a 50% range buff at max level. So like the old DJ was like very strong. And then after that we have the Hidden Wave update, which I will probably, even though the old Hidden Wave was very iconic, I'll probably give it B tier just because of the fact that it didn't give anything from beating it, and at the time it was like very hard and not many people could do it, and you beat it and then you weren't really given anything for beating it. So probably just get B tier because of that. Next up is Ace Pilot update. I'll just give that A tier just because it was sort of innovative at the time, because it was the first tower that would like move around the map when you placed it. It would just like spin in circles and attack the enemies. Now, this is one of the best events, the 2019 Christmas event. This one was really good. Not only, we literally got 3 towers in this update. So I'm pretty sure out of every update in TDS, this is like the only time they added 3 towers in a single update. They added the mortar, they added the archer, and the frost blaster. And at the time, all of these towers were really OP. Like when they added the archer, which was the holiday archer, that tower was the best early game tower, like almost of all time. It was basically doing the same amount of DPS and cost efficiency as the golden scout. It's just that the archer had pierce, so it was doing like if it hit 3 targets, it was basically doing 3 times as much DPS as like the golden scout. So, and all of those towers were like OP when it came out. But not just that, the event rewards were really good. Like all the emotes, like the lazy couch, and all the skins were good. Like they had like good skins. And not just that, but the event was fun to beat and it was fun to play. So overall, it'd have to be an S tier update. Now after that, they added the golden cowboy to the game. After that, I'll give this one C tier, honestly, just because It was basically just a buff to the cowboy that already existed. I mean, it was strong, but it wasn't too interesting just because it was basically just like more damage and money. Now, this one will probably also be C tier. It's the electroshocker. And interesting enough, when this was first added, it only had a placement limit of 2, making it really not that good. I mean, the stuns were nice. It didn't do that much damage. So it was like a support tower, but like most people wouldn't use it. So I'll just give it C tier. I'd say like once it got buffed, like the newer one is stronger even than the old one. So I'll just have to place that one lower down. Now this is probably another S tier event. This is the Egg Hunt 2020 event, the Easter event. So basically, this event was one of the most iconic ones in TDS. It got a lot of people into the game. It was like one of the best times. And the lobby that was added was one of the most iconic lobbies with the music that played. And it came with a bunch of skins as well. There's like 10 skins in this update. The Swarmer Tower, which when it was released was OP because you could do the glitch where you like stack the DPS of the Swarmers. So you could get like thousands of DPS with the Swarmer. So I'd have to put that one at S tier because of that. And then moving on, this one's probably A tier as well. It's the Polluted Wastelands update. The only bad thing about it is the fact that when it was first added, the amalgamation was very OP. It was nerfed like 2 days later, but it would like heal like 500 health per second. So if you weren't doing more than 500 DPS by wave 22, it was basically impossible to even deal any damage to the enemy. So you just like lose right away. And then they just like nerfed it later on because players got really upset about how strong that one enemy was. And now after that we have the smaller is bigger update or whatever. This was the update. Honestly, I sort of think that this update was better than the Polluted Wastelands update because this added the pursuit towers to the game. But not only that, this was the update that buffed Gladiator to the point where Gladiator became the best early game tower, best like mid game tower in the game for like a long time. This is what buffed it, and then everyone wanted the Gladiator after this update. And now this one's kind of funny. We have the disaster that was the hardcore update. And I'll have to give this one F tier, like no questions asked, just because of the fact that literally every single tower in the game was nerfed. There was not a single tower that like got buffed in this update. So it like completely ruined the game's balancing, making it like much harder to like beat like Fallen or anything, just because there wasn't that many good towers anymore. It was like, yeah, it was good that they added hardcore and Accelerator, but it doesn't make up for all the bad changes that they made in this update. And that reflected on like the next few years because it took them like 2 to 3 years just to like buff all those towers that were like heavily outclassed and nerfed in this update. So like even though the Accelerator was very strong, it could not make up for all the bad changes that was made in this update. The Halloween 2020 update is, I'll probably give this one D tier as well. I wouldn't give it F tier just because the event itself wasn't necessarily bad. It was just a problem that it lasted for 6 months. So you literally had Halloween in like May of that year. So it lasted a long time. I mean, there was nothing bad for the event. The skins were good. The event itself was good and fun to play. The emotes are good. It was just that the fact that it lasted so long with no updates or no content just made it get dragged out so long to the point where it became very boring and repetitive, and then a bunch of people quit since there was like a lack of content for the longest time. And the interesting thing was, obviously, you'd get Toxic Gunner for beating this event, but Toxic Gunner wasn't added to the game until the Frost Invasion event. So if you beat the event, you would not be able to obtain the event tower until the next event, which was sort of weird. And now we have the April Fool's 2021 update, which I'll just give it B tier. I mean, it wasn't much. It only lasted for a day. I remember playing this event. It was pretty funny because this was whenever you selected Fallen on the first wave, the imposter would spawn, and he would have 99 health, and and to this day, he's still the fastest enemy in the game. So he would spawn in wave 1 with 99 health, sprint past all of your defenses, barely taking any damage, and you'd basically just like lower your health as soon as the game would start. So it was like very funny to like see this. It wasn't necessarily like game changing. It wasn't like didn't add anything new, but it's just like really funny to see, I guess, for like the day it lasted. And then we have the Frost Invasion event. I'll give this one top of A tier. The only problem with this event, it was like you could tell when it released, it was very rushed, sort of, where to this day, like they didn't even release all the skins. Like there's so many skins that was planned for this update that didn't release because it was rushed. Like the Lemonade farm skin never released, the Frost Mortar never released. There was like this one skin for the military base that never released. I mean, it would be S tier if it wasn't this like rushed. It was still like polished, but like there's still a bunch of unreleased content that was planned in the update that never came, and that's like the thing that was holding it back. But not only that, is that the fact that this event was also like 6 months long. This event literally lasted from May, all the way from May to December. So it lasted like just as long, if not longer, than the Halloween event that happened earlier. So it was also a very long event where we got like no updates for a long time as well. So those two things like hold it back from being an S tier event. And now I'll probably just give this one into D tier. It was literally, so the 4th of July 2021 update, literally the only thing they added in this update was a skin for the Accelerator that was in the deluxe crate. They added the Mage Accelerator into the deluxe crate, and then they basically just called it a day, and that's all they added in this update. So it was a pretty big letdown in terms of content, like only adding a skin and then just like nothing else. So it has to go pretty low down because of that. And now this one is pretty obvious. The solar eclipse event is S tier. Obviously there's a new battle pass, a bunch of skins. The event itself, this was the first time they did the night system, which is also going to come back for the newest event this year, which they had 4 nights 1, 2, 3, and 4, and each one of them progressively got harder as the nights went on. And it started off easy, but then got harder. And then obviously the final night was against the Umbra, which you had to like charge up the cannon, the light cannon, to like shoot her and then stun her. And then obviously the event tower was the Executioner. And when the Executioner released, it had the game breaking glitch to basically when you sold the tower, it would still like attack and be there even though it was sold. So people would like buy it and then sell it really fast over and over and over again. So you could basically get it to the point where it was doing like tens of thousands of DPS instantly. And with that glitch, you could like solo like a bunch of bosses that had like over 1 million HP, no problem, with that one tower. After that, we have the Valentines 2022 update. All this did was add some Valentine skins into a battle pass. I'll give it B tier because it just gave like a reason to grind. The skins were like okay, they weren't necessarily the best. They're just like sort of like pink skins for like certain towers and stuff. So after that, we have the entity system update, which reworked the militant, making the militant a bit better than it was before because it removed the reload system, which no one liked. But not only that, it also added support for a bunch of enemies to be on the map at the same time, so it made the game run smoothly compared to how it used to. So it can handle like up to 5,000 enemies at once without crashing or anything. And it also added like a bunch of like effects to the enemies and stuff as well. After that, we have the duck hunt event. I'll give this one C tier. Actually, B tier. The event itself, I hate to be the one to say this, but the ducky skins really are not that good. They're basically just like default skins, but like yellow with like a ducky face on them. So I really didn't think that these skins were like that cool or interesting. Obviously, there was no event tower because they added the engineer to the game instead, which when the engineer was added, it didn't have the sentry shields. Because of that, the sentries would just get like one shot by the bosses and just like die instantly, making the engineer not as good as it is now. And obviously it's a defend the center event, and no one likes those really. And the problem with this one is that this event was like way too easy to the point where it was like impossible to lose. Like you could like beat this event with just like really low tier towers that you get at like the start of the game. So it was just like way too easy. And the boss only did 100 damage to your base, even though you had like over 1,000 HP. So you could take like so many attacks from the boss and not die. Next up, we have this is the Plushy Commander update. I'll give this one C tier because I don't really like the plushies that are overpriced. That you have to pay a bunch of money just for like a skin that's basically just like default skin in like 12 FPS. But the reason I'm putting it higher up is just because this was the update that increased the rewards for hardcore and also added the shields to the engineer sentries so they don't get one shot by the bosses anymore. And now this one has to be an S tier. This was one of the most requested updates for a long time. This was the golden perks update where you can finally use like the golden skins on other skins, because like before this you could only use them on one thing. After that, we have the Polluted Wastelands 2 update, which it was sort of interesting. It was, at the time, it was probably the hardest game mode at the time. Not anymore, it's not the hardest, but when it was added, the nuclear monster had, I'll give this one A tier as well. The nuclear monster had 1.5 million HP, and it's still the highest health enemy in the game. The enemies are all very good. The soundtracks are good. The new models for the enemies are all really nice. Just that the only problem was there was no new skins or nothing. It was just the game mode. And also, like, the rewards were terrible. Like, you could only get, like, one premium crate for beating it, and that was only on the first time. So, like, the rewards for beating this were, like, terrible for, like, how challenging it was at the time. It's easier now just because it, like, buffed so many towers. But when it was added, it was a bit harder than it was now. After that, we have the summer season. I'll put this one at B tier as well. It's just like the Valentines event. This was one of the smaller battle passes. It only had like 5 skins in the entire pass, and like none of them were really that good besides like the lifeguard commander and like the barbecue pyromancer skin. So other than that, it was just like all right. Now we have the Badlands 2 update, which I'll also give A tier. They reworked the cowboy, so that made the golden cowboy really OP. It added Badlands to the game, which is a really fun game mode, which is pretty challenging. So overall, pretty good. And then after that, we have, I'll give this one, most of the battle pass updates where they just add like a battle pass of skins, nothing else. So pretty much just all go in the B tier because they're not that special. This was the Phillips one where they did a collab with Phillips, which like made no sense, where you just like collected razors by killing enemies to level up in the pass. And then after that, we have the pizza party update, which I'll give S tier because of the fact that they added Warden, which is a pretty strong tower. And not just that, this is one of the most unique game modes at the time, where like all of the enemies are basically like themed around FNAF, sort of. And the theme.
Whoa! Mic off. Mic on.
Ow! Dude! I was so scared, you guys! Oh my god!
Theming was really good. Like same with the OST. Whenever you played this game mode, sounded pretty good. I really like how it basically gave a lot of coins. So it was basically the best way to grind for golden crates. It was like recently nerfed though, so it no longer gives as many coins. But before they nerfed it, it was like the best way to grind coins. After that, we have the matchmaking update, which I will give it S tier because this matchmaking replaced elevators, and the elevators suck. even though matchmaking isn't perfect, it's still better than using the elevators. Like when you use matchmaking, sometimes you'll get paired with like lower level players, but overall it's still better than the elevator system. After that, we have the Christmas 2022 event. This one's D tier because of the fact that this event sucked, because it was literally just like a reskin of the duck hunt event. They made it harder, so on the final wave was literally RNG, because you could only take like 3 attacks, like 2 or 3 attacks from the final boss, and he would just like randomly use the attack. You couldn't prevent it. There's nothing you could do to prevent it, so you just had to like hope that he like randomly would not use his rocket launcher attack to like kill you instantly. So like you could like make it to the final wave with like 32 max accelerators and still lose, just because of the fact that this guy would like randomly kill you. So it made the event pretty annoying. And then Elf Camp is not that good of a tower because its placement limit is so low, and it's like outclassed by like every other spawner tower, so it has to go pretty low. Now we have the Frost Crate update. I'll give this one a C tier just because it was like just a crate and that's all they added, and it was like costed coins and it's pretty boring. So other than that, I'll give it C tier. Afterwards, we have this is basically a buff update. It buffed a bunch of trash towers, making a bunch of these towers actually usable in years. It made Mortar became good, Gold Soldier became good. Same with like Electroshocker and Pursuit. It basically made a bunch of like non-meta towers viable, and it really changed the game's balancing. And this was the start of the phase where TDS would like buff a bunch of trash towers, making them good. And it all started with this update, so I'll have to put that one pretty highly up. After that, we have the Archer update. This one changed the game's UI to make it more modern, and it added Archer back, so I'll give this one B tier. I'm pretty sure that Engineer was also nerfed in this update. This is the update that nerfed Engineer, if I remember correctly. Now, this one has to be an S tier update. This is the Keybinds update. This one has to be S tier just because I use the Keybinds all the time, and whenever I play like one of those recreation fan games of the older TDSs, and they don't have the keybinds, it's just like so annoying, and I've become like so used to the keybinds, like I can't really play the game without them. So I'll have to give it S tier because it basically just made the gameplay so much smoother when you have keybinds in the game. And then the Accelerator and Demo Man rework, I'll give this one like middle of A tier. This was the update that basically buffed Accelerator so much to the point where it basically became meta again, like top of the meta for like the next few months. It was basically Accelerator was the strongest tower until it got slightly nerfed, and then Engineer got buffed, and then it just started to like fall off. But at the time, Accelerator was probably the strongest tower at the time of this update. Now we have the Ducky Crate update. I'll give this one D tier, honestly, just because of the fact that it basically reused a bunch of skins from the Duck Hunt event while just adding like a few new Ducky skins to the game. So it's like sort of lazy, just like bringing back a bunch of skins and calling it a new update. Now after that, we have the Nametags update. I'll give it C tier just because of the fact that, I mean, Nametags are cool, but like they are just like cosmetics and they don't really add anything. And even though like skins don't add anything either, like at least skins look cooler than the name tags do. Like they're kind of just boring. So let's put that one a bit lower down. Now community maps. This one is also sort of C tier just because of the fact that these maps, it's been over a year and these maps are only in private servers. Even though I still have a private server myself, I still don't go into it that much. So like most of the time you don't even play on these maps just because you need a private server to use these maps. And because of that, it has to be lower down because you don't use it as much, I'd say. And then the Vigilante Crate update, we're going to have to give that one a C tier just because of the fact that the skins were cool. But this was the part the point in the game where they were not updating in a long time, where there's like no content updates and it was just skin crate after skin crate after skin crate, and no one liked it. Like everyone was complaining because there was like no new towers, updates, events, content. There was nothing but just skin crates for like 7 months straight, and like everyone became bored. And this is about the time when like TDS got like their almost like all-time low player count. Like a bunch of people like quitting because there's like nothing to do during this time. Same with the pirate crate. It's basically the same thing. The only difference is they made like a few balance changes in that update, which were sort of minor, so it doesn't really matter that much. And then the Lunar Overture event, I'll give this one A tier, honestly. It was sort of hated on too much just because the final act was like buggy and was impossible to beat. But if you just don't look at Act 3 and you look at everything else, I mean, they eventually did fix Act 3. It was just that the problem is once they fixed it, it became beatable with literally only Gold Soldier and Solo. But Act 1 and Act 2 were both very good. The Jester at the time was one of the strongest support towers at the time, being able to like confuse the bosses and send them backwards. So at the time, Jester was strong. They added a bunch of new skins that were cool. They brought back a bunch of like skins. They brought back a few of the Ghost and Pumpkin skins. And because of that, I have to put it pretty high up. After that, we had the Black Friday sale. This one's just C tier. They just brought back Executioner and Toxic Gunner. That's about it. Honestly, for these quests, I'll put them in D tier just because of the fact that when they were like first added, they gave like nothing. Like they were like the worst quest ever. It was like some of the quests were like beat Fallen like 5 times just for like 50 coins. Like the problem with these quests is that they were way too difficult for like way too low of rewards. Like no one was gonna go out of their way to do these quests for like so little rewards at the time. So I'll have to put them one lower down just because like they were sort of like useless at the time. Now this one is probably an S tier update, the Christmas 2023 update, Krampus's Revenge. The event, this is one of the most fun events because every like few waves, like the map like loadout, like the layout of the map would like switch and it would sell all your towers, making you replace them. And it was sort of like they combined all of the past like Christmas events into one. So you like sort of like rebattled all of the old enemies from the old events, and then they brought back Krampus as the final boss of this event. And Cryomancer is a pretty good tower. This update also reworked both Freezer, Frost Blaster, and Sledger. The only downside to this update was that Sledger was like heavily nerfed in this update, which kind of sucks, but other than that, it's a really good update. Now after that, we have the content creator skins, which is a very positive update to the game. I remember like one day I just randomly woke up and this update came out of nowhere, and I was very surprised to see this update, and I'll give this A tier because I really liked it, because the fact that the developers like acknowledge the community and like the community members, they like acknowledge them. So I'll have to give it pretty high up, I'm not gonna lie, because of the fact that it was really cool to see that these content creators that put a lot of work into the game were finally getting like acknowledged and the recognition that they deserve from the developers, I guess. And now we have another A tier update, being the Crook boss update. Before this update, the Crook boss was like sort of worthless, even the golden one, because I had the golden one before this update and I didn't use it that much. So it made the Crook boss much more valuable than it was before that, so you could actually use it in game without it being bad. And now we have the Trapper update. I'll give this one B tier. I mean, the Trapper, it is a good tower, but like it's not really fun to use because you have to like put it like you have to use like very weird placement for it, and it's sort of like slower to like place its traps. Like I don't like using it, even though it is strong. It's like not that fun to use, even though you can do a lot of damage with it. It's just like you sort of have to like go out of your way to use it and make it efficient. Now we have the Hunt update events. I'll give this one B tier as well. This was the Roblox sponsored event. This, you got the, for beating it in the hard mode, you got the skin for the warden, you got the core blocks warden, and then you also got the UGC from this event as well. It's pretty good. It's just the fact that the OST was good, the enemy designs are good. It's just a bit too easy for my liking, so I had to put it down just because it was like too easy. Now we have the military base update. This one's A tier as well. My favorite thing about this update was the fact that they gave the airstrike ability to the military base, making it very strong. One of the strongest abilities in the game because it can do tons of splash damage. And this literally brought military base from like a D tier, F tier tower. It was like one of the worst towers into the game, and now it's like one of the best. So it like heavily buffed the military base in this update, making it actually viable and useful in strategies. No one used this tower before this update at all, and now I use it like quite frequently ever since this update came out. And now we have the Skibidi toilet update event thing. Not much needs to be said about this update. We obviously know where that update goes, straight into F tier, obviously. Now we have the mission quest update. I'd give this one a B tier. All of the skins and rewards are good, and it actually gave me a reason to like replay the game after like owning all the golden skins. Like it gave me a reason to actually grind the game again. It's just that the fact that some of these missions were really repetitive, like a bunch of them was just like beat like Polluted, Wastelands, and Hardcore a bunch of times, and it just like made it like pretty boring because you're just like all the missions felt like the exact same. After that, we had the Mercenary base update. I'll give this one S tier because this is a very fun tower to use. I really like using this tower. It's just like really satisfying to use when you like can change it to like what it spawns. You can just change it to whatever you want, and the airdrop ability is also really good. Intermediate mode, I'll give it C tier just because the fact that I forgot that this game mode existed. Like no one plays this game mode unless you're like sort of just like starting out. It doesn't give many coins, and the enemies are sort of forgettable. Like overall, this is just like a sort of forgettable game mode that you don't really play much at all. Like if you want to like play easier game mode, most people just play Molten over this, and if you want a harder game mode, most people just play Fallen over this. So there's like not really any reason to play this game mode at all. After that, we have the Consumables update. I'll give this one B tier. Obviously, at first, I did not like Consumables. I did not like the way they worked, but like as the weeks passed, I sort of got used to them, and I've gotten like used to them to the point where I'm sort of fine with them being in the game. But before, I didn't really like them. I sort of like hated them. Like I'm like, why are they in the game? It just makes it like too easy. But I've sort of gotten used to them, and now I just sort of like regularly use them. But also like sometimes I just like forget to use them, so they're just like all right, I guess. After that, we have the Brawler update. This one is also S tier. It added the Brawler, which is super OP. This is also the Commander rework, which it sort of nerfed Commander. Like the range got smaller. Its fire rate buff is not as strong as it used to be, so like slightly nerfed Commander. But also, this is the first time we got PvP testing, which PvP still isn't in the game. It should come later this year, I'm pretty sure. Maybe like next month or in December. And I'm really excited for PvP to come back. So that's why I'm giving it S tier, because like Brawler being a strong tower and the PvP testing was added. Now, all this stuff is like more recent, starting with the classic event. This one is better than the hunt event, so I'll give this one B tier, but like high B tier, because it had 5 missions, which are fun. The scout skin, the guest scout skin, is a really good skin. I really like the way that they designed it to be. The way it shoots and sounds is it's very creative, the way that they made this skin. So I'll give that B tier. It was a pretty fun event. Even though it was easy, it was still fun. But I'll have to give it lower down just because it was easy. Now this update was like this was like a D tier update. Like literally all they did was add skins to the premium and deluxe crate. So no one really cared for this update at all. And then this is like top of B tier, like very top B tier. The Ace Pilot rework. This added The Ace Pilot rework, obviously, so the Ace Pilot became a lot stronger. It gained the ability to fly in reverse, so you can reverse the path of the direction that the plane flies. And they also added challenge maps to the game, which when they were first added, I was really excited to see challenge maps, but they were sort of disappointing just because literally every single challenge map was just like a reskin version of Fallen with like a modifier, like the tanky modifier, where the enemies like take less damage and have more health, and like the nimble modifier, where like just the enemies are faster. Like overall, it was literally just like Fallen. Every single challenge map was just Fallen with like a modifier added to it. So like I wish the challenge maps were like more unique. This is a F tier update. Just the 4th of July update was really bad just because of the fact that they promised, they're like in the Discord, they promised like multiple skins in this update, and we thought that there would be like a battle pass or a crate, like some way to obtain them, but they like sort of like lied to the point where there was only one skin, not multiple, and the only way to get it was in the deluxe crate. So it's basically just no content in this update at all unless you paid money to get it. Now after that we have the Fallen update. This one is like top of S tier alongside the solar eclipse event. This was like long awaited. It was well needed. Fallen is way too easy, so this update actually made it challenging, so you can actually enjoy Fallen again. So it actually feels like sort of a reward to beat Fallen. And they've brought back Hidden Wave after like 2 or 3 years, so Hidden Wave is back, so that's pretty cool, which I really enjoy, being able to beat Hidden Wave again. So you know, pretty good. Then we have the Fallen Heroes update part 1. This one is B tier. It just added 5 new Fallen skins to the game you get from missions. They're high quality. This one is also B tier, just Fallen skins part 2. Basically the same thing, but just like more skins are added. Some of the missions are like pretty hard, but some of them were like sort of easy at the same time. So I'll just give it B tier overall. After that, we have the DJ rework. I'll give this one A tier. It buffed the DJ in some regards, but at the same time it was nerfed in some regards. Like at max level, the discount went from 20% to 15%, and then the range buff literally went from like 35% to 25%. So they nerfed the range and the discount, but they added the damage buff, which sort of made up for the fact that it lost like some discount and stuff. So overall it was good, but it sort of went down. This one is obviously F tier because the only thing they added was like the most like overpriced skin in the game, and that was it. So it has to be pretty bad. This one, they just added a few new skins to the game. I'll give this one C tier. It had like 1 mission quest and like a few skins. This update was not that good. I'll just move it on to D tier. I didn't enjoy that one. This obviously S tier, pretty high up. The Gatling gunner is such a fun tower. It's probably the strongest tower in the game as of right now. It does ridiculous amounts of DPS and damage. It's really fun to use, and it completely like changed the way the game is played. Now we have the funny gravedigger picture thing, where they basically just like changed the gravedigger's design. That's about it. And they added like Cyber City as well. Now we have this is the update. They brought back Slash in this update, but they also added like this weird sticker things. I'll give this one C tier because those stickers are sort of annoying. The only reason it's not F tier is because of the fact that they brought back Slasher, I guess. This update is D tier because it was just like bug fixes and stuff, nothing special. But that concludes it. That was the end of the TDS update tier list. This is a very long video, but if you made it to the end, please like consider subscribing because this took a while to make. Anyways, goodbye.